So many of us, we want to forget the past. We want to forget those things that we've done wrong in our lives. But God would tell you, remember. In Micah chapter 6, verse 5, he says, you remember your journey from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the righteous acts of the Lord. In order for us to know what God has done in our lives, sometimes it's worth remembering where we've come from to get where we are. If you recognize Shittim, this was the last encampment before the Israelites were crossing over into the promised land. They were crossing the Jordan River in Numbers 25, verse 1. Gilgal was that first stop after crossing the Jordan into the promised land. So after 40 years of wandering around in the wilderness, they have landed in an encampment called Shittim. And all they have to do now is cross the Jordan River into the promised land and set up camp in Gilgal. Will they do it? You see, sometimes we have to let go of our past. We have to let go of those things, knowing God will lead us now. God's fixing to transition us. God is faithful to lead us through the transitions and to fulfill His promises in our life. That's what we have to remember, that God will do that. We have to remember His righteous acts. At the beginning of Micah 6, He says, my people, you remember what Balak, king of Moab, plotted and what Balaam, son of Beor, answered. You need to remember that you were an Israelite and how there were people that were going to bring curses down on you, but God protected you from those curses. Wherever you are today, can you believe that God has allowed you to live to get to this point right now, to wander through the wilderness, all the difficulties, all the poor choices, all the wrong decisions that you've made led up to Shittim. And now you're going to cross the Jordan River into the promised land. Can you trust God to get you there? That God is working behind the scenes for our good, even when others seek to do us harm. You see, we need to recognize the danger of sin and that call to holiness. See, Shittim was where Israel fell into sin with the Moabite women and idolatry. And we could all remember times in our life when we were living in sin. And Gilgal was where they sought that protection from God, where they built the altar and they were working toward having that new relationship with God. So we need to trust God in the uncertainty of our journey, that when we get up every day, we need to remember where we came from and where we're headed to, where we're going, and that God has us, that He can get us through that day. So as you go into this day, remember God's past faithfulness in your life. Reject the sin. Renew your commitment to God. Trust God even when facing challenges, knowing He will guide you, and move forward in faith from Shittim to Gilgal.